betting all in on the turn. Don't get to see what he had, but I don't guess it was. I mean, it probably wasn't great. We have ace queen here. Hopefully, going to hit some sort of hand and win it. Raise the eights over on the right, pretty obvious. Bunch of limpers, good hand on the button. Definitely gonna raise that up. So we have ace queen here. We're gonna three bet. These people seem to be calling three bets enough that I think it's their value. If I got four bet by any of these guys when I had ace queen, I would just fold. I think Guda, Max Silver, makes fun of me because on merge I four bet fold ace queen sometimes, but calling all in with ace queen on this site is generally terrible. People just don't fly bet bluff enough. The two kings here, I would actually rather see one king just because people might think I'm bluffing more often. There's two kings out since I can have ace king less, but I'm still going to bet here and I'm still going to count on winning at least half the time. So that's a no-brainer continuation bet. Most of the time when people call your three bets, they tend to have pocket pairs and sometimes like medium, like high-ish suited connectors, like 10-9 suited, and sometimes like ace-queen and stuff. But they don't tend to have anything fantastic. Cry for vision bets, I'm going to 3-bet again. He tends to 4-bet me fairly wide, I think, so were he to 4-bet me, I'd probably shove there, but Jacks is definitely far from an automatic shove for me if somebody 4-bets me. But lately I've been 3-betting more and people have started calling me more, so I've started to add more like value stuff like jacks and tens sometimes into my 3-bet range. So Whiteski, if you notice, has been limp calling a ton of hands. Seems to play very passively. So we flop top pair, pretty good kicker, and we bet. And I believe he calls. So this doesn't really tell us a ton. He could have any sort of ace. He could have he could be slow playing a set, possibly. He could have a flush draw. So we're going to bet a little bit again, try and get money out of a flush draw or something. We get check raised. Spoilers. And for me, this is an easy fold. Somebody who's been limping could easily have ace-4, ace-6, and been playing it weird. Could have ace-9. That's probably the most likely thing, given the sudden check raise. Somebody who's been limping and playing really meekly is generally not going to all of a sudden just decide to check raise somebody who's been showing strength on two streets as a bluff. I know it looks really weak that it looks really weak for me to be folding top pair there, but there's no reason he has to know I had top pair. For all he knows, I didn't have anything. So it's not like if you fold a decent hand, people are just going to magically know that they're exploiting you. And of course, that's super exploitable for me to fold that there. But again, because he doesn't know, there's really no harm. And because he's a fish, were he a good player, I might think about calling. I'd probably still just fold, though, just because there aren't a ton of hands that I can really beat. I have to be counting on him exactly bluffing, and I have to face another bet on the river. So it's not like, even though I only have to face 3-1 bet right then on the turn, I have to count on facing probably a river shove too. So my real odds are actually much closer to 1-1, which means he has to be bluffing 40-45% of the time. Is he? I kind of don't think so, so I fold. And you should always consider when you're calling those bets the likelihood of facing a future bet, and if you think it's pretty high, and there I really did, then you have to consider that in a factor. You can't just be like, I'm getting 3-1 here. He's probably bluffing more than 25% of the time I call. So yeah, don't feel too bad for folding top pair when shown strength. Especially, we're full ring and everything. It's fine. I'm gonna 3-bet here because I have an ace blocker. I can also flop an ace and maybe just like check it down because he's probably not going to try and bluff at me on an ace high board. And then he's probably raising pretty wide. He is on the button, so I'll throw in. Especially at full ring, I feel like people don't like to play back at 3-bets as much at full ring. And he's tanking. I guess he really cares about his $7, but he folds. We have 4s over here on the left. Gonna play that, obviously. Probably not gonna 3-bet or anything. Just gonna call. Because, again, I feel like you sort of give up whatever value your pairs have by 3-betting them. Once he checks, I thought about betting there, but he could easily have, a lot of times when good players check down in position, it's because they want to have one or two bets get made. Now, I actually could have value bet him there, like he might have called one bet, maybe. But most of the time he's going to have like a small pocket pair or an ace high like that. I mean, ace high doesn't have a whole lot of outs against me. I'm not really afraid of letting it have a showdown. If I keep checking, he's very unlikely to have a jack. I could induce a bluff, and I might call if he bet once there. Maybe not when the 10 hits, but if another small card hits and he bet, I would probably call. Just because, at some point when I check 3 times, most players will at least try to stab at it once. And as far as having fours, I mean, as far as the times when I check down 2 or 3 times, I have somewhat top of my range, probably, having a small pocket pair. Because I would have certainly bet a jack on the turn. So yeah, don't be afraid to call down. If you check a bunch of times and people bet, then they have a really polarized range because they would have bet any strong hands at the beginning, and they would probably check down a lot of medium strength hands. So don't be afraid to necessarily to call. Like if there's only one bet, you have to call. It's small. You can sort of see how they play. I like to 3-bet here just randomly, just throw one in. It's a little big, I guess, but against better players, I tend to make them a little bigger. And obviously if I get 4, but he 4-bets me here, it's fine. I haven't 3-bet as a bluff on the table. This is the only one, so if he's 4-bet bluffing a lot, then obviously it's I'm not being really exploited because I'm not 3-betting a ton. So I think it's just bad luck. I think he may have either had something or he just decided to 4-bet me at the right time, and that's going to happen sometimes. If you 3-bet people, they are going to come back and 4-bet you sometimes when you don't want them to, and that's just something you have to deal with. Just bad luck pretty much, just as bad as running kings and aces. He checks here, I bet, because people don't tend to call from the blinds with like small cards unless they're small pairs. I like to check just because I would definitely bet again if it were any high card, like any 10 or above. I would bet and probably expect to get a fold, but a 4 doesn't. Anything that he called with there before, if he's fishy, there's a good chance he's calling again. I don't really feel too comfortable betting there. However, like I said, if any Broadway card, 10, Jack, King, Queen, Ace were to come, I would definitely bet there again, like close to pot, and expect to get a fold a ton of the time. Those are the kind of boards you can definitely 2-barrel if you get a card that looks like it hits your range, but the 4 doesn't necessarily, unless I just want to pretend that I had some sort of medium strength, some sort of medium card hand. Sorry if I'm rambling a little about some of these. Recording them on the spot and trying to keep talking is a little bit difficult, especially when I haven't done this in a long time. So, we get raised. Probably not going to try and 3-bet them again soon, although with some players, players will respond to you 3-betting them a couple times in quick succession in different ways. Some of them assume that the second is usually a bluff because it's unlikely you got a good hand twice in a row. Some of them will re-level themselves and assume that it's never a bluff because it looks so bluffy. I have actually found that most players seem to fall into that category. Most players where I have, either because I got a good hand the second time or just because I wanted to fuck with them, I 3-bet them twice in quick succession, either back-to-back hands or in the same orbit, tend to fold very often to the second one. I've only had a couple players come back and 4-bet me on the second one, assuming that it must be a bluff. So just keep that in mind. If you're afraid of bluffing the second time, if you're afraid of 3-bet bluffing twice near each other, I would say just go for it against a lot of regulars. A lot of them will fold. I mean, you can't just do it a ton, but it's something you could add into your arsenal, and I feel like for a lot of players it looks stronger than if you had waited a while, actually. So I go ahead and assign a fish thing to him for just being a clown in various ways of the whole thing, and you can see hold 'em all or nothing, still limping and min raising and that sort of thing. So he's also no good either. I mean, this is a very good table. I mean, we have one tight guy on our right and 3 fish on the left, and if we could hit something, we could probably make a decent amount of money here. So that's sort of what the game plan is just to play really boring poker, and we're going to wait and hopefully hit something, and that's what we'll do. So we have Jack 10 here. We could 3-bet. You know, if somebody bet, or we could just raise, but or we could just call. I mean, calling's fine from the button. I mean, we have a decent hand, not a great one. When he checks there, I have found that when people bet and then check, while it is the case that sometimes people do it to check raise, it's pretty rare. Probably when a preflop raiser bets and then checks to you, I would say you're only going to get check raised like 10% of the time. Most of the time, they're just going to fold. Definitely enough that you should bet almost every time. And yeah, sometimes they call. If they call, you can just give up. Honestly, they fold so much that if somebody raises and then checks to me, I pretty much always bet, and I think that's a good strategy. I mean, it's very exploitable. They could 3-bet me, and I would just shit. I wouldn't know what to do. But they don't. So, go ahead and bet them. And that's something you can take advantage of, too. If you raise with Jack 10 and the flop is like, 10 high, and you're playing a guy you think will just keep betting at you, there's actually nothing wrong with just checking and letting him bet. There's a lot of players nowadays, now the games are somewhat aggressive. I don't know how they are at the lower stakes, but later on the games get sort of aggressive. In a lot of cases, it's actually better just to check and let people bet. The worst thing that's going to happen is you'll look fishy, but people will bet, when you check them with a much bigger range than we'll call with, and that's the whole point, just to get money in. So we flop, pretty much the nuts here, and I'm also electing to 3-bet on the right. Just randomly, no real reason. So we're just going to call. I mean, he probably can't have anything. We pretty much have all the good cards. I'm going to check again. He bets so much here, or at least he ends up on the right, we're obviously going to bet. Not much of a story there. On the left here, he bets so much that I feel like, at this point, he must have it because he's played so, sort of like a fish. On the right, as I mentioned, people don't tend to fuck around on king-high boards after you 3-bet, so when he calls, I'm completely done. I'm done. On the left, in a vacuum, I think raising here is terrible. If you're just going to play one hand, I think all it does is give him the opportunity to fold, worse hands and not have to bluff at it. But I think the main important thing about, I don't know how I won that on the right. I think I go to check the hand history, and he had something really weird. Like he had, I think he had like tens or something, which, that's not something you're going to see a lot. If people call you on a king-high board after you 3-bet, I generally just shut down because, I mean, if they're not afraid of me then, how would they ever be afraid of me? That's like a great flop for my non-bluffing range. So I'm going to have to be very sure in the future to either keep betting at him on those boards or to just not c-bet to begin with if he's going to call me. But getting back to talking about the ace 10, the reason that I did raise, well, partially was because I think maybe I just made a mistake and wasn't thinking, which, it does happen. I'm going to be realistic. I'm making a video, and that does weird things. Sometimes you play some ways you wouldn't normally. The other reason is, though, that if people know that you're always going to call with a 10 there and never going to raise, then when you do raise, they will know that you're bluffing. Now, is anybody at this table that observant? Probably not. But it is something to keep in mind, that if you were to always slow play your hands, then you give away too much information when you raise. You let people know that you can't really have it, because you would always call there. Because calling is pretty much better. I mean, I don't know if it's a ton better. It really depends on his bluffing rate. But calling is definitely some amount better. It's pretty much always better, unless he somehow raised me on the flop, turned a queen, bet it, and would call with it. But that's, I think that's so ridiculous as to, it probably wouldn't, you shouldn't really consider that. It's not a huge percentage. So basically what I'm saying is, for the most part, you should just be check calling there with that ace 10. I think I probably made a mistake by shoving. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't play perfect every time. There are reasons for raising, but I'm not sure they apply to this game, is what I'm saying. So I think I made a mistake there, and if you are to get a hand like that, and somebody is raising you and seems to be committing themselves, I would just go ahead and let them bluff. If he has jack, I think the only thing that shoving makes him call with that he might not bet is like jack 10 or 10-9, but even then, I feel like he's probably going to shove river.